Ray and his wife suddenly noticed their neighbors hurriedly packing their bags, looking like they were about to leave on a long trip. Curious, they went out to ask what was going on, but the neighbors didn't explain. They just urged them to run for their lives as well. Before Ray and his wife could ask more questions, the neighbors, looking very flustered, drove away. Ray and Claire followed closely behind. When they got to the street, they saw that other people in the town were also leaving their homes. It seemed like everyone in the town knew that something terrible was about to happen. Some people didn't even bother to turn off their gas stoves. This eerie scene made the couple uneasy. For safety's sake, they quickly decided to join the exodus with their daughter, but not long after they hit the road, they saw many cars returning, though it felt very strange.
Where are those people headed back?
They had no choice but to keep driving forward until they reached the town's exit. There, they discovered that the road ahead was completely blocked by the military. A hovering helicopter repeatedly announced that an unknown infectious disease had broken out in the town. No one was allowed to leave and everyone had to stay home in quarantine until the outbreak was completely under control. Ray and his family stood there, bewildered, not knowing what to do next. Why had an epidemic suddenly broken out? Suddenly, a rock fell from the mountain and landed on their car, leaving a huge dent in the hood. They looked up in horror. Was that just an earthquake? To their surprise, the next second, 2 fighter jets roared past, heading straight for the town and the valley below. People gathered around, puzzled as to why the military would send fighter jets for an epidemic quarantine. What came next was a terrifying sight. As they watched their homes consumed by flames, the onlookers were in shock. No one had expected the military to plan on wiping out the entire town to control the virus. Before the crowd could recover from the shock, they saw the fighter jets turning towards them, causing everyone to scatter in fear. Amid the chaos, Claire spotted a water tower in the distance. She remembered it was near an elementary school and had a shelter, so they ran towards it. Just as they reached halfway up the hill, the fighter jets bombed the place where they had just been. Seeing this, Ray and his family didn't dare stop for a moment and ran frantically until they reached the shelter's entrance, but the fighter jets seemed to have spotted them. Luckily, just before the bombs were dropped, Ray and his family made it into the shelter unharmed. When it finally grew quiet outside, they cautiously began to explore their surroundings. Fortunately, the shelter was a doomsday bunker originally built for wartime, stocked with ample supplies. But now, all Zoe wanted to know was how long they would have to stay in the shelter. Ray couldn't answer this question. He could only comfort his daughter, assuring her that they would leave as soon as the crisis was over. The Ray family settled into an underground shelter. Since there was no sunlight here, Zoe soon developed claustrophobia. Everything seemed terrifying to her, and she had nightmares every night. Luckily, Ray was very patient. He often played fun games with Zoe and told her bedtime stories. As the days went by, they unknowingly stayed hidden in the bunker for almost a year. Each day, Zoe would draw a line on the wall. Before they knew it, she had covered the entire wall with marks. Zoe wanted to see the outside world more than once, but Ray and Claire always stopped her. They had long realized that the situation outside was not getting better. It was getting worse. There seemed to be some terrible presence trying to break into the bunker. Her parents told Zoe that the virus had turned people outside into monsters, and they might be the only survivors left in the world. To ensure their safety, they reinforced the steel door and established 4 doomsday survival rules that could not be broken.
1. Never be
I know
loud.
you know the rules.
2. Never lose control. 3. Never open the door. 4. Never talk about the breathers.
But even with these precautions, Zoe's longing for freedom remained unchanged. To discourage Zoe from going out, Claire took out her periscope so she could see for herself what the outside world had become. Zoe was shocked to see nothing but desolate ruins and no signs of life. After witnessing the devastated outside world, Zoe never mentioned wanting to go out again. But soon, they faced a new problem, because the food in the bunker was very monotonous, consisting mainly of various preserved canned goods. Their supplies were running dangerously low after nearly a year. After eating canned soybeans for several days in a row, Zoe wanted to try the canned peaches today. To her surprise, when she opened the can, the peaches were nowhere to be found. A hole on the side of the can made it clear that their bunker had been visited by mice. A bad feeling washed over them, and after a thorough check, they found that the eaten cans were not just one. All their canned peaches, which they had been saving, had been devoured, along with other cans, 12 in total. That was 2 weeks worth of food. With their limited food supply, They would now have to ration their portions even more, or they would soon have to venture outside to find more supplies. They also needed to catch the mice that had stolen their food. One day, while playing a game, mother and daughter suddenly looked in the mirror and saw something behind them. They turned around and saw the culprit, the mouse. Zoe rushed to call out for her father. Today, they were determined to execute the thief and make up for their loss by turning it into a roast. Ray cautiously approached with a knife. He thought he had it, but to his surprise, the knife missed the mouse. The escaping mouse knocked over an oil lamp on the table. As the mouse was about to escape, Ray's knife got stuck in the table. In the crucial moment, it was Claire who stepped up. She used pliers to crush the mouse to death. However, before they could celebrate, they turned to face an even bigger crisis. The overturned oil lamp had exploded from the heat, igniting a raging fire. Ray tried to extinguish the fire with water, but the rusty pump jammed at the crucial moment. Claire resorted to beating the fire with clothing to prevent it from spreading further. After much effort, Ray finally managed to get a bucket of water, but it wasn't enough to completely douse the flames. Fortunately, the fire was under control, and with their combined efforts, they finally extinguished the burning table. By then, the entire bunker was filled with smoke. As they watched the smoke slowly drift out through the skylight, they realized an even more pressing problem. The smoke escaping could potentially reveal their hiding place. Ray cautiously peered outside with a periscope, but for now, there was nothing unusual. Claire, however, was very worried, because such thick smoke could be seen for miles. Ray was unconcerned, believing that by the time anyone saw the smoke and arrived, it would have dissipated, and they wouldn't know where it came from. But Claire had another concern. Burning would not only produce smoke but also a lot of ash. If the ash accumulated at the skylight, it would surely be noticed. Ray checked with the mirror again and indeed found a significant amount of ash at the window. For safety's sake, they needed to figure out how to remove the ash. This was the first time in a year that the family would open the sealed steel door. Zoe was left alone in the bunker, anxiously waiting for her parents' return. As time ticked by without any sign of her parents, she couldn't help but use the periscope to look outside. Thankfully, her parents were fine, but when she turned the periscope to the other side, she saw a shadowy figure moving through the woods towards her parents. In a panic, Zoe shouted as loudly as she could.
Mom! Dad! Look out behind you!
However, outside, Ray and Claire were busy with their tasks and didn't hear her warning. Fearing that they might be captured by the creature, Zoe hurried to the bunker exit, using all her strength to push open the steel door and step outside. Despite the danger, but looking around, she couldn't see her parents anywhere. Just as Zoe frantically searched, Claire suddenly covered her mouth from behind, and Ray came over upon hearing the commotion. Zoe was about to explain what she had seen, but in the next moment, luckily, the figures were just a few wild deer. But wild deer don't run away for no reason. What were they afraid of? Claire sensed danger and the family quickly ran back to the bunker. As Ray closed the door, he thought he saw something and hurriedly locked the steel door with an iron chain. They thought they hadn't been seen, but footsteps sounded above their heads. Zoe, being young, couldn't hold back her tears in the tense atmosphere. Ray comforted Zoe, telling her to close her eyes while he told her a story. Just as Zoe calmed down, they realized the creature hadn't left and seemed to be searching for an entrance. They didn't dare make a sound. Watching the creature's heavy footsteps approach the entrance, their hearts were in their throats. The worst happened. The creature tried to open the steel door. Luckily, it didn't persist for long and seemed to give up. Just as her parents breathed a sigh of relief, they turned and saw a horrifying sight. The daughter's toy doll was accidentally hung on the water pipe. If the pull ring of the toy is released, the doll will automatically start singing, and their location will be immediately exposed. However, the accident still appeared. Ray quickly grabbed the toy and used a knife to remove the speaker before smashing it to pieces. Zoe was heartbroken to see her only toy destroyed, but Ray and Claire had no time to worry about Zoe. They were only worried about whether the noise had attracted the attention of the monster. Ray and Claire stared intently at the steel door above them. Just as they started to relax, they were unaware that the steel door was being turned at that very moment. To their horror, the creature had heard them after all, and they were terrified. The creature's strength was immense, and even the thick iron chain couldn't hold it back. Realizing the creature would soon break in, Ray searched frantically for any usable tools. Claire climbed the ladder, holding the chain with all her might, but she wasn't strong enough to make a difference. As the steel door slowly opened, a terrifying face appeared in front of Claire. In a desperate moment, Ray arrived with a metal rod. thrusting it repeatedly at the creature. Claire took the opportunity to close the steel door again, and Ray secured it tightly with the pipe. The immediate crisis was averted, but their bunker's location was now exposed and no longer safe. Since creatures often traveled in packs, a large group would likely attack soon. Sure enough, it wasn't long before they were horrified to feel the ground start to shake violently, signaling the arrival of more creatures. With nowhere to run, the family had to think of a way to defend themselves. This time, the steel door was breached in an instant. They looked up in terror to see several pairs of terrifying eyes staring at them. They quickly ran inside, but when they turned around, they found that the monster had already entered the bunker. Claire grabbed the oil lamp and smashed it on the ground. Then, they pushed the shelves over to block the creature's path, but this wouldn't hold for long. They needed to escape the bunker. Their only way out now was the skylight. In a rush, Ray used a stick to break the wooden boards covering the window, then helped his wife and daughter out. But when it was his turn, a problem arose. The window was too small for him to fit through. After countless attempts, Ray had a sudden idea. He told his wife to grab his left hand tightly. Then, with a powerful twist of his body, they heard the sound of bones breaking. He had twisted and broken his own arm. Ignoring the pain, Ray tried again with his wife's help, and this time he managed to squeeze through. But as he was about to climb out, a creature grabbed his foot. Before Ray could leave any last words, the creature dragged him back again. When Ray got back on his feet, he was surrounded by countless creatures. The next thing Claire and Zoe heard were sounds of fierce fighting from below. Seeing this, the mother and daughter were heartbroken but had no choice but to keep running for their lives. As they fled, Zoe tripped and fell, dropping her doll. She reached out to pick it up but saw countless creatures closing in. They ran through a forest and arrived at a place filled with abandoned vehicles. Suddenly, a helicopter appeared in the sky, its lights locking onto them. Instead of feeling relieved, they continued to run desperately, but there was no way they could outrun the helicopter. Soon, a large net was thrown over them, capturing them tightly. At that moment, the so-called monsters finally revealed themselves. Unexpectedly, it was just a fully armed human squad. At this moment, the plot takes a dramatic turn. It turns out the real monsters were actually the family of three. At the beginning of the movie, the people in the town had been infected with an unknown virus that turned them into monsters when they lost control of their emotions. To prevent the spread of the virus, the military bombed the town. When they first entered the bunker to hide, Claire noticed something abnormal about her body. She also understood why they were being hunted. In the end, they couldn't escape their fate. The soldiers immediately drew blood from their bodies with syringes. Their blood was black, indicating that they were all infected, which meant certain death. Despite Claire and Zoe's desperate pleas, the soldiers remained unmoved. With a command from the captain, the soldiers raised their weapons. In their desperate situation, Claire and Zoe began showing signs of mutation, but in the next moment, Ray, now fully mutated, suddenly appeared, taking down a soldier in an instant. It turned out that when Ray was dragged down in the bunker, he had transformed into a monster and fought back, killing his attackers. The others quickly opened fire when they saw this, but in close quarters, the monster was faster, quickly taking out several soldiers. However, even a powerful monster couldn't withstand a barrage of bullets. As Ray lay on the ground convulsing, the soldiers cautiously approached to check. When they turn around, they realize that Claire and Zoe have disappeared. As they searched, they were unaware that danger was closing in. Claire, driven to the brink by her husband's death, lost control and mutated into a monster, launching a surprise attack on the soldiers. However, after taking down a few soldiers, Claire also fell under the hail of bullets. Her monster features are slowly disappearing. As Claire was about to be killed, Zoe went completely berserk, transforming into a small monster. Zoe pounced on the last soldier, pinning him to the ground and attacking ferociously. If Claire hadn't stopped him in time, the soldier would have been dead too. Claire just doesn't want her daughter to become a murderer at a young age. But Zoe, now out of her mind, even attacked Claire. Thankfully, with Claire's constant soothing, Zoe finally calmed down and gradually returned to normal. Unfortunately, Ray succumbed to his severe injuries and left them forever. As a support helicopter arrived overhead, Claire had no choice but to take her daughter and hide in a nearby sewer. To their surprise, they encountered their neighbor Joey there. Led by Joey, they reached another bunker. Inside, they found not only the neighbor's family but also other infected townspeople. With no other choice, they hid in the bunker, unsure of when they would see daylight again.